radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
All right. Good evening, Fade to Black. Bespoke Radio for the masses. Yeah, man. How you doing? Today's Monday, September 21st. September 21st, 2020. $265 days into the new year, only 99 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of beautiful downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? How you doing? What a great week we have on the show. Tonight, very special guest, Ben Moss is here. We're going to talk about his new book. I have read it. It is called... Well, it's about Socorro, the 1964 New Mexico UFO landing, okay? That is tonight. Tomorrow night, Seth Breedlove joins the show. Excited about this? Seth Breedlove and his new film, The Mothman Legacy. That is tomorrow night. Wednesday night, Greg Hausch is here. Greg joins us for a full evening of the singularity, artificial intelligence. Oh, man, what a great week on the show. Thursday night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. What a great week on the show. Let's get this thing cracking and moving along tonight. And Kevin Korber, I think I didn't see anything from him tonight. He may still be in the hospital. I hope he's listening. And Kevin, please get well. Not hearing from you today kind of bummed me out. So, Kevin, tweet something. I know you're listening. All right. Kevin, not in the sandbox, posting those screenshots. Something is missing. So there you go. Kevin, please get well. All right. Last week, we had on Carolyn Ford, EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. And it was a great show. And I got so many emails and, you know, the post and things and the tweets about you going out and checking out her site and finding a crystal skull of your very own. And that means a lot. And it was a great show. That was just a fantastic show. And you can go to EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. The links are over at JimmyChurchRadio.com. You'll see them right there. Click on it and use the promo code Jimmy. It's that simple. You will get 10% off of your Crystal Skull order today. All right. Let's jump forward. Let's move ahead. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. At JChurchRadio. Start right there. Everybody knows I'm a big social media guy. And I try to read all of the tweets. You know, it gets pretty active, especially during showtime. So you can post to hashtag F2B, that is the sandbox, and hashtag F2BQ is fade to black questions. You can also email throughout the show, Jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Big night tonight, Socorro. More on that in just a minute. Let's get to the breaking news, the asteroid report. NASA is warning of at least 5 close asteroid flybys this week. Check this. Just days after Japan's space agency announced it would be extending its asteroid hunter mission. Tonight, that's tonight, the 21st, the 10-meter and 16-meter 2020 RQ-6 and 2020 SJ-12, both asteroids will shoot past the Earth at distances of 1.2 and 1.4 million kilometers, respectively. 3 more near-Earth objects are expected to fly past us tomorrow. First up is at 50 meters in diameter, huge, and the largest of the 3 is 2020 RD5. It's going to fly past the Earth at 61,000 kilometers per hour at a distance of 4 million kilometers. Then it's asteroid 2020 SM2, measuring just 5.8 meters in diameter at just 1.2 million kilometers away. Last will be the 27-meter 2020 RB6, traveling at 71,000 kilometers per hour, set to pass our planet at a distance of 2.5 million kilometers. All of these asteroids carry that 2020 name, which means they were just discovered. It kind of scares me. All right, there's our action. 5 asteroids between today and tomorrow. Incredible. All right, other breaking news today. Pretty cool. Thanks to enhanced imaging analysis techniques, researchers have discovered that the ice on Saturn's moon Enceladus is fresh and regenerates. Just a small shift in wavelength from optical to infrared reveals glistening, fresh ice caps. A team led by Rosen Robidel of the University of Nantes in France analyzed images captured by the Cassini space probe during 23 close flybys and found that some process keeps regenerating the ice across the lunar surface. The team will apply all that they have learned to an upcoming JUICE and Europa Clipper missions, which will study Jupiter's icy moons Ganymede and Europa. Crazy. Regenerating ice. Where is it coming from? All right. It was announced today by Taiwan's president. He is accusing Beijing, that is, as in China, of purposefully inflaming tensions in East Asia after Chinese warplanes crossed the sensitive median line across the narrow strait that separates the mainland and the self-governing island of Taiwan almost 40 times over Friday and Saturday. Taken together, the repeated incursions, which came from multiple directions and involved a combination of sophisticated fighter jets and heavy bombers, is without modern precedent and marks a significant escalation in cross-strait tensions. According to Taiwan and the United States government reports, prior to this weekend, Beijing's warplanes had only crossed the line intentionally 3 times since 1999. One in March 2019, once in February of this year, and again last month in August. This weekend, 40. Remarkable, incredible, and it scares the crap out of me as well. Now, here we go. What is up with birds dying and falling from the skies? Out of the UK, about 225 starlings were discovered with blood in their bodies in a lane on Anglesey, North Wales, police said. Dyfed Edwards, whose partner found the bird, said it was as if they dropped down dead from the sky. The Animal and Plant Health Agency has collected them for testing and will examine whether they could have been poisoned. North Wales police said it was investigating the very strange discovery and has appealed for more information. And then photos and videos posted online showed a Russian street littered with birds. That's right. The incident happened in Balakovo, a city known for its large nuclear power plant. According to a post from the page Typical Balakovo on the Russian social networking site VK, residents of the city in the Saratov region, around 1,000 kilometers south of Moscow, witnessed a road strewn with dozens of dead birds. What is going on? Incredible. Let's get the show cracking. Happy birthday to today, the one and only Bill Murray. Bill Murray today is 70 years old. What is Bill Murray's best film? Is it, do we just stop at Caddyshack? Do we just stop right there? Caddyshack? Right? Groundhog Day is excellent too. And there are so many others, but Stripes, right? But I'm going Caddyshack. Stephen King today is 73. Where do we go with Stephen? Man. Where do we go with? I have no idea what his best work is. I don't. Too much good stuff out there. Stephen King, The Shining, right? Stephen King today is 73. Ex-Oasis frontman Liam Gallagher today is 48 years old. And also, check this, pretty incredible. Eagles ex-guitarist Don Felder today is 73. Our dead guy's birthday today is, moment of silence, please, Leonard Cohen. 1934 to 2016, died at the age of 82. Leonard was a Canadian singer, of course, songwriter, poet, and novelist. His work explored religion, politics, isolation, depression, sexuality, loss, death, and romantic relationships. He was inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame, the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He was invested as a Companion of the Order of Canada, the nation's highest civilian honor. In 2011, Cohen received one of the Prince of Asturias Awards for Literature and the 9th Glenn Gold Prize. Cohen's most famous song, of course, Hallelujah, was first released on his studio album Various Positions in 1984. Leonard died on November 7, 2016 at the age of 82 at his home in Los Angeles. Leukemia was a contributing cause. According to his manager, his death was the result of a fall at his home on the night of November 7th, and then he died in his sleep. Happy birthday, Leonard Cohen. On this day in history, OTD, 1942. The B-29 Superfortress makes its debut flight in Seattle, Washington. It was the largest bomber used in the war by any nation. And here's your Fader fact. Man, this is turning into my favorite part of the show each night. I swear. Fader fact. And this was vetted. India and Pakistan have deputized their diplomats to ring the other country's embassy's doorbell and run away in the middle of the night. Oh, man. And that is your vetted Fader fact. Incredible. Tonight, very special guest Ben Moss is here. What a great guy. A great researcher. We're going to be talking about his new book about the 1964 Socorro, New Mexico UFO landing with Lonnie Zamora. Tomorrow night, Seth Breedlove joins us to announce his new film, The Mothman Legacy. Wednesday night, Greg Hausch is back. He's joining us for a full evening of artificial intelligence and singularity. Thursday night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. Isn't our definition of ice frozen water? I don't know. Is it? Is it? Is ice only frozen water? No. What about dry ice? Right? I'm just saying, there's other forms of ice. There's ice out there that you wouldn't put in your drink to chill it. That's from Mark Tarana. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Oh, man. What about Bob as one of Bill Murray's finest? Yeah, it was a pretty good film, too. That was a pretty good. Back off, man. I'm a scientist. I know, right? Ghostbusters, right? That's up there, too. There's Kevin. Still here and listening, Jimmy. All right, Kevin did check in 7 seconds ago. There you go. I feel better, Kevin. At least you can still text on your cell phone. That's a good sign. That's positive. Are you using both thumbs? Or is that voice to text? Yeah. Yeah, the world wants to know. All right, Kevin, that's good news. Thank you so much, man. I'm going to like that tweet right now. All right, let me hit this River Moon coffee. The best coffee in the world. Fade to black blend. The best. Before I go off on my rant, I want to say something about upgrading your computer. Okay, just let me say this. A couple of years ago, one of my computers went down, and it was a secondary computer. It was the one that I used just for phone calls and bringing on guests. That's all it's used for, and some audio editing. And there's a reason why it happens on a separate computer. It's audio feeds and everything else. Here on the show, because of the phone lines are brought in independently, and you have to have control over the independent phone lines, right? And on different faders and EQs and things, and you want to be able to mute and bring stuff on. There's reasons for that. Well, my computer that I just use, which stays on the screen over here, and that computer, it finally just went down, and it actually was the hard drive. So I thought to myself, okay, you know what? I just use it for simple stuff. So I go to Fry's, and I said, I need something with a decent processor on it, but I'm not concerned about memory space. I use external drives on it. I just need, a functional sound card. I'm just using it for phones, and it's not that big of a deal. So I bought a new HP Hewlett-Packard, and it was an i5, and I didn't really look too closely at it, but that particular computer had a 500 gig hard drive and 4 gigabytes of RAM. Windows 10, I'm not really even thinking about what I'm doing. So, but bring it back to the bunker, plug it in, it works, it's fine, I get it configured, done, I'm off to the races. But from the very beginning, now there's a reason for this madness, and I'm going to get to it in a second, but from the very beginning, it was just slow. And I couldn't get a hold of it. Just couldn't get a hold of it. Could not, not doing anything with the computer. And I'm trying to get these edits done and things. And it was just opening up and trying to run 2 things at the same time, which is common, right? Run 10 things at a time. Finally, this weekend, I was done. It was like Thursday, and I rolled into Friday. I'm like, I'm done. I'm going to buy a new computer. So I started exploring that, and then I called my computer guy, and I almost just bought a new computer. Call my computer guy, and I read the specs, and he goes, oh, man, you got a good processor. That's an i5, 5th generation. No, you're fine there. But how much RAM do you have? And I looked, and I said, 4 gigabytes. He goes, dude, that's not going to work. That's unacceptable. Windows 10 uses 2 gigabytes of RAM right there. You can't even run that computer. It's worthless. You need more RAM. And slap an SSD drive in. Now, so I take the computer, and this is my advice to everybody out there. You can get a new internal SSD drive, 500 gigabytes for $60, $70. That's all you need, man. Your operating system and some extra stuff. But an SSD drive, right? I was like, okay. And he goes, man, bring it in. I'll slap one in for you. And so I took the computer in, got the memory upgraded, 16 gigabytes. That was weirdness in itself, by the way. But anyway, new SSD drive installed. I bring it back. Didn't do anything to the computer. I spent $100 on an SSD drive and two 8 gigabyte RAM chips. This thing is running like nobody's business, right? I mean, it's insane. It's perfect. And I almost threw it in the trash. I was going to go spend $300, $400, $500 and get, something that would work for what I needed. And that's it. Two 8 gigabyte RAM chips and a 500 gigabyte SSD drive, purring like a kitten. I could not be happier. So that's my advice. That was part of the weekend here, getting this, and the thorn has been pulled out of the lion's paw. Big deal. Big deal. So that's my advice to everybody out there. Don't retire your old computer. Slap an SSD in it, kick up the RAM, and you are in business. All right. Tomorrow is our 1300th show. Think about that. An impressive number for sure. When you first start out with any type of broadcast, it could be a TV show, it could be whatever it is, it could be a podcast, it could be a radio show, it could be anything. But when you start out and you start to kick in these milestones, right? Show number 50. If you're doing one show a week, it'll take you a year to get to show number 50. All right? Then you hit show number 100. Imagine if you're doing a TV show and you're doing 16 episodes per season, 20 episodes per season, it's going to take you 3 seasons to get to show number 50. It's a milestone number. Getting to number 100 is a big deal, and you learn a lot along the way, trust me. And then you look at those huge, impossible numbers, like show number 1,000. You're never going to get there. And I had those thoughts at one time. It's impossible. The amount of work just to get show number 1 off of the ground is enough to scare anyone. But by the time you get to number 50, you have a firm grasp about how much work into doing a show night after night, week after week entails. It's incredible. So here we are at number 1300. And the real milestone of number 2000 is still 5 years from now. So we're just going to plug along. You need to think about that for a moment. That's how big these numbers are. Tomorrow we're at number 1300. And our standards were set from the very beginning to have the very best guests, to have the very best audio, to have the very best production, and to carry on the tradition of what a late night talk radio show should be, right? And to ask questions and to question everything, to bring you the personalities that you want to hear from, right? To take a serious look at the world around us and try to uncover the mysteries that fill our world. That was our standard from the very beginning. That is what Fade to Black has always been about. I've always said that this show and our community was like the film Barbershop in more ways than one. You can say anything here, anything on this show, and not be afraid to speak your mind. What happens after that, well, that's something else altogether. That just happens. But we have to listen to everybody, sometimes more than once. What can't happen on Fade to Black is censorship. You're never going to censor the barbershop, are you? You're not going to censor Fade to Black. Censorship in that, what am I speaking about? Censorship in that we will not be told what to do or what guests to have on. You may not like a certain guest or topic, but it will always be interesting. Which is how you grow. Which is how you learn. Look, if you ride your bike down the same path every day, you're never going to know what's down that other path. You're not going to know. Sometimes you just need to go right instead of left at the fork. Go and explore. I remember when I was a kid, man, I was out riding motorcycles out in the cornfields next to our house. We had all these motorcycle trails. There's this one trail that I never took, and it went through these bushes and just kept on going. I was scared. Friend of mine, oh, man, friend of mine, he had a little Kawasaki 80, and he goes, man, you need to go down that. You need to go. I go, no, man, I'm not going through there. I'm safe out here. He said, no, man, you got to follow me. I don't know. All right. And I followed him. And we went through those bushes, and I was on a trail I'd never been on before. And it was exciting. And we rode through and saw things and stopped. And it was great. In the future, when I would be out there riding and I would come up to the fork and I'd look down that path that went through the bushes, sometimes I went ahead and went left. And I went through those bushes. And I experienced that. That's what this show was about. Some days you got to do that. And just listen to something that may rub you the wrong way. Something that you don't understand. Something that bothers you. Something that you're not comfortable with. But that's how you learn. You don't stay in the comfortable zone. And that's what Fade to Black has always been about. We'll never change. Tomorrow is show number 1300. And as I wonder all night how we got here, and I got to think about tomorrow, we did it. Show number 1300. In 5 years, I'll talk about show number 2000. With that, I'm going to get out of here because when I come back, Ben Moss joins us. We're going to be talking about his new book. He's just released it about the 1964 Socorro, New Mexico UFO landing with Lonnie Zamora. Tomorrow night, Seth Breedlove joins us on show number 1300 to announce his new film, The Mothman Legacy. Wednesday night, Greg Hausch is here for a full evening of Singularity. Thursday night is Fader Night with open lines all night long. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. That's all you got to do. On the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet, this is Fade to Black. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. Introducing the Game Changer blend from River Moon Coffee that delivers a customized blend made specifically for the Fadernauts. If the game is rigged, change the game. It's a bolder cup with some bite. Game Changer is the coffee of choice for those that prefer an organic dark roast that is slightly lighter and milder, but it's still dark. With wild notes of pecans and chocolate with a rich, balanced, full-bodied cup that is roasted to perfection for a great coffee to start your day, as an after-dinner coffee or anywhere in between. Artisan, small batch roasted to perfection. USDA certified organic, all River Moon coffee is freshly roasted and packaged in the USA. Just go to rivermooncoffee.com or click on the banners over on our site and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. rivermooncoffee.com. Go Beckley Teppy.
This This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. KGRAradio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, folks. It's troubling times, and fear is pushing emotions, which in turn pushes health the wrong direction. Do you ever get an ache because life is uneasy? Try Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. Life Change Tea works on your digestive tract, helping to move food through quicker and comfortably so your health is spot on. Life Change Tea may not help with world issues, but it will help with your digestive issues. A glass a day helps keep the intruders away. So, change your life today. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. If your health game is off, get on by ordering Life Change Tea. Getthetea.com. And while you're on our site, look around at the great non-GMO organic supplements. And if you're a sales shopper, go to our specials page and see what's for you. I've been drinking the tea for 12 years, and I'm sure glad for its health benefits. Again, that's getthetea.com. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the planet.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black, I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What a great week we have on the show. Tonight, Ben Moss is here. We're going to talk about Socorro. Tomorrow night, Seth Breedlove joins us to announce his new film, The Mothman Legacy. Wednesday night, Greg Hausch, the one and only Greg Hausch, joins us for an evening of singularity and artificial intelligence. Thursday, of course, is another Fader night with open lines all night long, but tonight, it's Ben Moss. Ben has been with Mufon since the early 90s. He is a native of Richmond, Virginia, where he studied psychology at the University of Richmond. And as a UFO investigator, Ben also has diligently studied such disciplines as history, archaeology, physics, and astronomy, religion, and many other sciences required to investigate such an elusive subject as UFOs. Since a chance encounter with James Fox at the 2014 Mufon Symposium, it began a long and thorough search for what Ben called the Lost Socorro Footage. After locating and presenting this VHS video, Ben was introduced to the original NICAP investigator, Ray Stanford. 5 years later, after hundreds of hours of research, Ben has just released his new book. It's called Not of This World, the 1964 Socorro UFO with Humanoids, Witness, Policeman Lonnie Zamora. I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, the one and only Ben Moss. Ben, good evening. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. Thanks for having me.
No, it's great to hear your voice. And it's been a while since you've been on the show. And, you know, what's really interesting here, Ben, and thank you for joining us tonight, is that the last time that you were on the show, you and Tony, this whole Socorro thing started to uncover itself. And here you are 5 years later with everything released in a book. Did you expect this kind of journey, this 5-year road trip?
No, you never know what the final destination is going to be when you start some of these paths. But yeah, it was just one of the things that I put in the book was it was kind of the case that kept on giving, because the more we dug, the more information we found that hadn't really been made public or was sporadically, in different investigators' boxes, so to speak. There's been a couple of good books written about the case, but I wanted to update it all. And so, when we got into it, it just became the search for the footage. When I heard James speak about what was called 701, now called The Phenomena, his movie, and he showed a Socorro clip, and that's when I remembered seeing this clip on TV, and that became a long journey that led to Ray, and so that put us on a whole other path that has led down this journey to Socorro, because it just felt like the case needed updating with the Craigslist files and the information that Tony and I uncovered when we were, at the location on 3 different occasions.
Now let's talk about a couple of things before we get started here, because and I mentioned this to you before the show. Well, last week actually, not before the show. That it takes a lot for certain people, including myself, that does, that's into a lot of research, and you feel that you know everything there is about a case. And when something like this, about a case as significant as Socorro, that has been documented, and all of us have researched everything that we can on it, that when a new book comes out, is it going to teach me something that I didn't know, and hopefully allow me to go further into the research and continue to investigate? The book did that to me numerous times. There were a lot of things I didn't know about the case, thoroughly researched by you and Tony this time around. And there is a lot here for everybody to learn something. But there's something else, is that for me, it seems that in a very pragmatic way that you have everything in this book. Right? Everything is here in one edition for everybody to use as a reference guide. Was that your intention?
Yeah, I wanted to amalgamate all the data, some of the work done by Ray, because Ray Stanford was the only person that's still alive that was on site, invited by Dr. Hynek of Project Blue Book. So his book was great, and Ray helped me. He pretty much wrote, half of the chapter on the symbol and some of the other things that I put in the book. But it was a matter of trying to find, because the whole purpose was I kept seeing bad data, bad analogies, bad debunking and things about this case. And then several different TV shows got it wrong. And then when a friend of mine, I won't mention his name, said that, the craft landed on 3 legs, a tripod, I'm like, oh, come on, guys. You got to do better than that, because the craft had 4 legs. So I felt like all the material up to this 2020 date should be put in one place for the reader to decide for himself what actually happened there.
Is the best part of this case, and I think that for me, I think that the best evidence is in this case is Lonnie Zamora himself, right? Because we have all of the evidence and the photographs and the video and everything that is there laid out, Project Blue Book and Ray's work and everything else. But it all comes down to Lonnie, doesn't it? Is he the best evidence in this case?
Yeah, it's funny because I actually, felt like he was the perfect UFO witness, because here's a guy, a kind of a no-nonsense police officer who, very salt of the earth type of guy, honest, hardworking gentleman that didn't care, didn't even think about UFOs, and had this encounter. And so one of the things that we kind of found out was, and this was from a friend of his, that when he was so shaken by this encounter, he went to his priest, who told him, eventually said, you can do one of 2 things. You can tell the truth, or you can just stop talking about it, about this case. And so Lonnie always told the truth, because that was his nature. And the fact that it bothered him all his life, but he never tried to seek notoriety out of it. He had requests from, every country in the world to fly out and do interviews and do TV shows and things like that. He just was sick of it. And everything that he did, all his actions just showed that he had a very traumatic encounter that he was just tired of talking about it. At the end of his life, he just, was like, you can believe me. If you believe me, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine also. But he never embellished his story either, which is an interesting point, because it never changed over time. If you talk about something like Roswell, stories seem to get fuller and richer over time, but Lonnie always told the same story, and if anything, what I found out was he kind of kept some things to himself. I think he was a lot more traumatized by what he walked up on than he ever said. So, yeah, he was the perfect witness because he was just an honest guy, was not interested in the field at all, and had this strange encounter in the desert that just shook his world for the rest of his life.
Now, we're going to be talking about a lot of things tonight, and one of the things, and you just referenced right now, I was going to save this for a little bit later, but is the Craigslist files. So let's actually start there. This was something that I didn't know about, and as I'm reading the book is excellent. Oh, by the way, everybody, I'll tell you how to get the book in later on in the show. A little bit different way of ordering the book, but is the Craigslist files. So what are the Craigslist files?
So Rob Mercer, who was, I believe, the state director of Ohio Mufon at the time, he apparently had usually just looked online for UFO stuff. And, you know, as smart as he was looking around on Craigslist. And these files popped up on Craigslist. And to make kind of a long story short, what happened was the files were left or kind of at a location that Captain Morano had been living at that was part of Project Blue Book. And these were files and some boxes that he just, thank God, decided not to throw away when Blue Book ended because it seemed like the files had no place to go. And so he saved all these files, and a lot of them were with regards to Socorro, but some of them had like the Trennington film and some really interesting footage and other cases. And so these files were put up on Craigslist, and when Rob dug into it, and I have all this in the book, the emails from Captain Morano and between Rob and him, he gave him all this material. And so this was classified Blue Book material and some notes and journals and things like that, but 183 pages of it was based on the Socorro case. And I put the most pertinent ones in the book just to show you that there was a lot of time, money, and manpower expended to try to solve a case that is still classified as unknown. So these files are really important. Some of them are replicated in the Project Blue Book case files, but some of them were left out. And it just shows the confusion and the attention that was on this, the investigators of this case from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the FBI, was there and said, don't tell anybody we were here. The CIA was involved. And so it just gives you a broader view of how deeply the government investigated a case and still couldn't solve it.
One of the things that I think stands out about this case, if we look at 2 or 3 points right in a row that are eye openers. Number one is Lonnie comes up. We'll get into this in greater detail a bit later, but in its fundamental form, this is what happened. Lonnie comes up. Within a couple of minutes, he has radioed the state police. The state police miraculously were in the area. They are at the scene about 2 minutes later. So they were able to talk to Lonnie right away and hear from him why he was there and what was going on. That's pretty astounding. But later on that afternoon, we got everybody there. We got the Air Force. We got the FBI. Phone calls were let out. Everything goes back to Wright-Patterson. Hynek is suddenly made aware of what was going on. And Jacques Vallée was present at Wright-Patterson when all of this went down. The next day, Jacques Vallée flies out. Now he's on the case. So immediately, this case had the attention of just about everybody in the federal government, didn't it? I mean, like, for 1964, it was in an instant.
Yeah, it was I think the issue the government had was that it hit the newspaper pretty quickly. The El Defensor Chief in Socorro came out on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I think. So it came out. This occurred on a Friday, April the 24th in 1964. But the papers got a hold of it quickly. Had a lot of interviews with Lonnie, talking about the symbol and the creatures that he saw. So it kind of jumped the gun. Captain Holder, who was the uprange commander of White Sands, the nearby Air Force base there, he lived in the area, so he was on site pretty quickly. Hynek arrived, I think, on the 29th, the same day that Ray Stanford arrived. But he was there pretty quickly, and Sergeant Chavez was actually the first to show up when Lonnie called him and wanted only him to come to the site. And he noticed how freaked out that Lonnie was, and that was just the beginning of probably every arm of the government being involved in trying to figure out what landed in the desert that day. And that's why the more we dug, the more we found how baffled they were by all the doors that weren't, they could open any door they wanted to look into, and all the answers were, no, we didn't build that. No, it's not the lunar lander. It's not a vertical takeoff vehicle. And the fact that the Joint Chief of Staff was asking, you had to answer to all these guys. And so everybody was giving honest answers. And that's part of that Craigslist files, that chapter where I put in what I thought were the most pertinent inquiries by the government of Hughes and Bell's lab and NASA and all the organizations that would be involved in building a flying vehicle of this type.
Now, and again, we'll get into the detail of all of this throughout tonight. But Lonnie wasn't the only witness to this. There were several other accounts. One of them, of course, the tourist at the gas station. But there were other things that surfaced around there at the exact same time, right?
Yeah, there were. I have a whole chapter on egg-shaped craft that occurred in a time frame in the area, and some, years earlier, years later. But there were 3 independent calls into the police dispatch from the Albuquerque area saying that there was something heading towards Socorro with a blue flame, some type of thing flying through the air. So you had those independent witnesses. Then you had the Opal Grinder witnesses were a family of tourists from Colorado that said it almost smacked into their car, which kind of tells you that whatever this craft was having some difficulty. And then they saw Lonnie heading towards it, and they were never found. Then you had the Larry Kratzer and I believe his brother were driving, I think, west on 60 West, and they saw the craft also and reported that in the paper, and they were tracked down later. You had multiple witnesses of the sound. And then we found an account, when we were in Socorro, we found an account of a woman who had passed away, but it was just kind of common knowledge. It's weird. In Socorro, a lot of people that were there and the time frame that are still alive still live there. They haven't left the area. So you still have a lot of people that remember the event. And there was a woman who apparently had passed, but she lived off of the reservoir, which is kind of a canal area in Socorro. And she had told people, she said, yeah, I saw this thing come down the canal. It's kind of a depressed area with foliage on both sides. So it's a good way to approach from Albuquerque, come towards Socorro and not be seen. But she said, yeah, egg-shaped craft flew down here and then took a turn and headed towards where Opal Grinder's gas station was. And so that was never reported anywhere. And then we had a couple of other stories like that. They're just stories, but there were, even Ray had talked to the police officers there, and some of them kind of indicated they had seen it, but because of the way Lonnie was treated by the FBI and the military, they didn't want to ever bring up the fact that they had seen it also. We had heard of another landing near the reservoir that was kind of kept under wraps. There was something at a place called Box Canyon out there. It's just weird. When we were out there, we kept uncovering people that had heard stories or had been around people that had witnessed these events. And so when I did a newspaper search, I did find 3 or 4 other witnesses on the same day or preceding days that saw an egg-shaped craft of the same size and dimensions as the one that Lonnie saw.
One of the things that Lonnie said, which I think causes all of us to scratch our heads and just go, okay, this probably wasn't terrestrial, because of this very honest comment that he said. It was the roar. And then the roar stopped and the craft was silent as it flew away. That's the exact opposite of anything that you would think that if it was terrestrial, right? A helicopter or anything else. It's a very interesting point that he says out of an innocent recollection of something that happened very fast, but he was overtaken by the roar, and then the roar stopped. It's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, when I had to cover the hoax theories, a hot air balloon would have possibly a blue flame going up into a balloon, but certainly not down where the gondola would be, where you would have people sitting in there. And the fact that the blue flame itself kind of knifed into the ground wasn't a propellant, but it seemed like the craft lifted up with one type of engine that had the blue flame, and then that one cut off. And Lonnie said it was silent, and it kind of stayed there for a second. And I've been accused of making up the fact that Lonnie said it hovered there for a second, but in his own words, and he said it on TV, he said it just kind of stayed there for a second, and then it started moving towards the dynamite shack, completely silent. So it seems like there was a terrestrial type engine to land or work in atmosphere, but whatever that secondary engine that went silent kicked in, that's when it went towards the perlite mill and then took a beat up into the sky and probably hit 600 or 700 miles an hour before it disappeared, because it didn't take long to get to some mountains that were 6 miles away. And so it's very interesting, that and the diminutive size of the creatures that he saw.
And we'll get to the humanoids, which is a pretty loose term. We'll get to that in just a bit too as well. But it's very curious for him. He didn't say flying saucer. He didn't say sphere. He didn't say it was a rectangle. He said it was egg-shaped. Now and we can go through UFO sightings before and after that. The Socorro case is singular in this kind of description, isn't it?
Yeah, there was and I think a day or 2 days later was La Madera, which was almost a precisely same description of the same type of craft and landing. I know Ray doesn't have a strong feeling about that case. He thinks it might have been a hoax. But as I dug into that a little bit, there were reports by police officers that saw this thing. And so it might have also landed in La Madera. It's just that the amount of time and effort I put into Socorro, I just couldn't go after that also, because that would involve going to that town and digging deeper. But the evidence I found was there like 7 or 8 incursions of an egg-shaped craft in the area at that time. And it is a very unusual shape. When I did a search, the only thing similar is ellipsoid or football shaped or squashed ovoid was one. And so it's interesting that it's very rare, that you have that type of shape of craft. And it's just indicative of a flap that was occurring at that time.
The next part of this, which again is just interesting, it's so singular, is not only the humanoids outside of the craft, but he didn't see a door, and there were 4 legs that had extended from the craft, and it was sitting on the ground. And he had always described it this way, but we have the trace evidence that shows just that. And that is, again, very interesting. When you talk about the lunar lander or other things out there, very secretive projects and stuff, but nothing like this. This is what Lonnie saw, right?
Right. Yeah, when I did this investigation, we had to look at the fact that you have to look at the hoax theories or the other alternative explanations, which is another chapter in the book. But the lunar lander had, circular landing pads. This was more of a wedge-shaped, rectangular landing pad. And the lunar lander, it had an engine that used it's a combination. It's called hydroxide, but it's a very caustic fuel for the engine, and every time they test fired the engine, it had to be rebuilt because it was meant to operate in a vacuum of space. So the lunar lander, I put a chapter in there from NASA about the lander, and the lander didn't even actually really fly until October, but there was no scheduled flights on that date. It was being dropped from a Bell helicopter to test the integrity of its struts. But there's just no way you would test a top secret craft 30 miles off of a top secret base that you have at your disposal in the middle of a public desert. And and the fact that Lonnie was a very good witness. He had been, he had some military background as a police officer. He was very good at observing things. And so, his details never changed. And when you look hard at the case and the details, you really begin to see that there's really no other explanation. If you take Lonnie at his word, which I have a chapter about the nature of Lonnie in the book, you take Lonnie at his word, then you really have to think outside the box as to what he actually encountered.
He, in describing the case over the years, both with interviews, written, and audio, and of course television, he describes the case in like 4 sentences. Right? That's about it. There's just nothing else to the case, is there? I mean, that's it. He pulled up and he saw what he saw. There was the symbol on the side. He stumbled and fell. His glasses fell off. He got to his radio. He called Chavez at the state police. Chavez showed up, and that's the end of the story. There's really nothing else to it, is there?
Well, a little more. I mean, when he was rolling up, when he was chasing the speeder, there was a blue light that crossed the road he was on, and so that drew him to go up this really nasty hill into the Arroyo, into the desert there. And so he saw something descending, and he knew it was near the dynamite shack. So when he crested, after 3 tries, when he crested the hill, he was kind of leaning out the left side of his car because the object was on the left. He was driving on this hill that's barely transversable. And he was in a brand new car too. He was thinking somebody might have, there might be somebody in danger. There might be some issue, but he was looking out the left side of his window and he could see what he thought was an overturned car or an airplane or something. It was white and it just didn't look like anything he saw. But then as he got closer and he kind of went to an area where you could see into this depression, that's when he spotted the creatures that were kind of looking on the underside of the craft, like they were inspecting it.
Now let's stop. Ben, let's stop right there. We got to take a break. Perfect spot for a break. Our guest tonight is Ben Moss. We're talking about the 1964 Socorro, New Mexico UFO landing witnessed by Policeman Lonnie Zamora. The book is out, and we will talk about that and how you can get it. It's called Not of This World, the 1964 Socorro UFO with Humanoids, witness Policeman Lonnie Zamora. This is Fade to Black. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Hello, my name is Billy Carson, and I am a best-selling author and the founder of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Together with my team, we have built an all-new conscious streaming TV platform designed with every family member in mind. If you have ever wanted to travel the world and attend lectures and workshops from your favorite speakers but weren't able to, look no further. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. There are dozens of workshops and lectures from speakers you know and love. We have also included amazing categories to assure that your consciousness is entertained and elevating on a daily basis. Amazing interviews, ancient history, ascension knowledge, wisdom teachings, documentaries, conspiracies, mysteries, health and fitness, conscious cooking, meditations, finance, yoga, and so much more. To start your free trial on any mobile device or computer, surf to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's Forbidden Knowledge with the number 4, ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Again, visit ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer, Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of fade to black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA Digital Broadcast Station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And this is Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
Yes.
We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Ben Moss is here talking about his new book. It has just been released. It's called Not of This World, the 1964 Socorro UFO with Humanoids. Witness, Policeman Lonnie Zamora. Now, Ben, how can everybody get the book?
Well, you can hunt me down on Facebook. Ben Moss, you just type my name in, I'll show up. You can, if you're not on Facebook, you can shoot me an email to JB as in John Board, Moss, M-O-S-S, 09 at gmail.com. It's one of those weird email addresses at Gmail. So JBMoss at 09 at gmail.com. But most people on Facebook, if you're not, email me, and or there's many ways to reach me. You can find me all over social social media. Unfortunately, if I Google myself now, I show up everywhere, so that's kind of scary. But
yeah, it is. It is scary. We have the link to Ben's Facebook page over in his bio at jimmychurchradio.com. You can just click and head straight over there. Ben has self-published the book. So that is the best way to do it, is to reach out to Ben over on Facebook. The book is a good read. I am nearly finished with it. What I ended up doing is I got about halfway through the book, Ben, and I started over. Right? I was like, okay, wait a minute. And it was because there's so much information here. And I'm going through it, and I had to start over. Fantastic read, unbelievable. And there was a reason for that. You've got a bunch of links in the book and things to go and reference, and I was telling you about that too as well. It forced me to go back and look at things that I had gone over the years, forgotten about, and went back. And the book is sensational in that respect. It's so well done and laid out. And I want to get to a couple of points in the book. Let's talk about the humanoid figures. You say humanoid in the title of the book. Lonnie, for me, one thing that he never said out of the gate was, I saw 4 men, 3 men, 2 men, right, outside of the crowd. Right. He never said that. It was the exact opposite. He talked about these 2 small things in white coveralls. Let's take us through that. What did he say in the very beginning to Chavez?
Well, he said he saw 2 small. It depends on who you talk to, and there's different interviews where he says different things, but I don't think he really made public everything he said to Chavez about the beans, because as soon as they went back and the FBI agent said you should stop talking about the beans, not to shut Lonnie up, but probably to protect his integrity. Starts talking about seeing little creatures in 1964, you're pretty much labeled nuts. But the fact that they were he indicated when Ray and Dr. Hynek were there, he's standing next to the creosote or greasewood bush that's on site. He held his hand about 4 feet high and said they were about this tall. So 4 foot tall. And I kind of get the impression after talking to Lonnie's daughter and friends of his, that Lonnie was pretty freaked out. I think he may have gotten a pretty good look or a better look at what these creatures were than he ever actually told anybody, or that I could find out. But the whole thing about white coveralls, to me, sounds like a good way not to have to describe any features. I think when he was driving his car up and looking out the window, and he got to the point where he thought he was going to come up on a couple of kids or something, that he realized that he was seeing something that was not human, and that was the crux of the thing that bothered him the rest of his life, that he just finally came to terms with. Because towards the end of his last interview, and I reference all these links in the book, was 2008, I think, on UFO Hunters, where he said, the creatures, I don't know where they're from, but they're not from around here. And that was one of the few times I'd ever heard him say creatures. And so I think he'd come to the realization that they weren't of human origin, which, being a kind of a devout Catholic, was really tough for him to come to grips with. And that brings up, one of the interesting things that I found in the book was a person that approached me when Tony and I spoke at the 2016 Mufon conference in Orlando, Florida. A physical scientist approached me and told me he had run into Lonnie and Socorro. This is in the book, of course, but Lonnie had seen his radiation badge and found out he was a radiation scientist, and had taken him down to the site and told him what happened, and had asked Lonnie, "Do you think I got a dose of radiation?" Which is interesting, because that was in 95, 96, I think, that he ran into this guy 30 years after the event. Mm-hmm. He was still concerned that he might have gotten a dose of radiation from that blue flame that came out. So it's just the creatures were definitely, the thing is, and Ray found this out earlier, and I pretty much confirmed, there's no black project, there's no program I ever found that used small people or midgets, whatever the correct term would be. You didn't use people that were 4 feet tall to fly any black project that we've ever uncovered. And so the fact right away that the creatures were 4 feet tall and kind of seemed to be in some type of uniform, maybe for breathing purposes or whatever, just tells you that they weren't human. And Lonnie was definitely, that was the turning point in his life where he had to look at things a completely different way.
Well, the entire event, and the more that I look at it, is the entire event from when he pulled up to when he ran back to his car and the craft took off. We're only talking about a couple of minutes here. And Lonnie thought in the very beginning that he was like on a rescue mission. This was an overturned car. We've got injured people. He's got to get up there and see what's going on. When he went up to the crest of the hill, sees that it's not an overturned car. It's a craft resting on 4 legs. Then he's studying that part of it. Then he sees these 2 creatures. One of them turns and looks at him. That freaks him out, doesn't it? And he takes off running. And it's for him, the whole thing was shocking at that point because it was no longer an overturned car with injured people that he thought he was dealing with. It was something else altogether, right?
Yeah, when he was looking down at the 2, didn't seem to notice him, and then as he got to one of his closest approaches, one of them turned and kind of jumped. It seemed startled to see him driving up. And so Lonnie then lost sight of them. When he got out of his car, he heard the creatures apparently were on the other side of the craft facing away from Lonnie. So he heard 2 loud slams, and it reminded him of like a tank slam. But 2 slams might mean a double-hulled, craft, especially if it penetrated atmosphere. But it was 2 very loud slams, like there had been 2 doors open and shut, and then the craft lifted up with a roar. That's when he started running, ran into his bumper. His prescription, which were kind of like reader's glasses, came off, but he witnessed the whole event with his glasses on, and then he was kind of freaked out. He thought it was going to blow up. He had hit the ground because his Army training, he turned his head away and hit the ground when he heard this roar. Then when it went silent, he looked up again and it was just sitting there. And that's when it just kind of rolled off. So the whole event, it's interesting because I found an interview. It was about 2 minutes, 45 seconds. But then I found an interview where he speculated it might have been 4 minutes, which could just be a confabulation of time. But, when you have an event like that, that's especially so bizarre, time kind of stretches out. So who knows how long it really was, but it was very brief. It's just that he was so close and there was so much evidence left after the fact that, if you just imagine going through something like that yourself, it'd be hard to kind of come to grips with it after a while. You have to talk to somebody, which he did. He talked to his priest, and there were certain people in his family he would tell things to, but he never really let it out. He just kind of came settled with it at a point. Everybody did say that he was much more quiet after the event. It wasn't something that you asked about or brought up. If he talked about it, he brought it up himself, but you would never bring the subject up. You would never grill him about it. It was just something that if you wanted to talk about it, he might go there. If not, you never, started talking about that incident with him.
Well, one of the things that is part of our DNA is that we recognize a human face. That's just right. What you do. When you're a baby, your mom's face, right? You are able to pick faces out in a crowd. You can see the human face is what we identify with first. It's our DNA. He never, as far as I know, he never described human features when describing these creatures, and he never said anything about a human face. And if that's what he saw, right, he would describe that. But he never did quite go there, did he?
Yeah, he said, humanoid is just a term for something that has a head, 2 arms, and 2 legs, and it's built like us. But
right.
The diminutive size, yeah. And when they asked him, he said, when Walter Schroed asked him, the local radio station, did they have any gear on? Did they have anything on their head? Could you tell? And Lonnie just goes, no, I couldn't tell. It was just like, just like a white uniform. So either he didn't want to say any details that he saw, or he couldn't discern any, but he certainly couldn't discern that they were human. That your point is correct. He didn't see eyes and a mouth and ears or, a military insignia or anything like that.
Would it indicate to you, and it seems like it almost went this direction a couple of times, do you think that these creatures were wearing helmets?
I think that they were probably in some type of suit. It sounded like there was, it's funny how our suits that our astronauts are wearing are evolving. They're going to eventually be these skin-tight, very strong, very thin materials that are almost like a second skin. And I think, that they might have had something like that on, because it doesn't sound like they were, I didn't hear, in a lot of cases that you think might be good UFO landing cases, you hear about devices or gear or uniforms. There was just none of that. It just seemed like the craft was kind of an off-white. The 2 creatures were white. They were just very small, very tiny. And there were it was funny because there were 2 round indentations in the ground besides the 4 landing gear that seemed to be like maybe perhaps a ladder that had shifted when weight came down. And then there were almost what was described as paw prints, or 2 parallel bars, like where the creatures were standing, there were these strange prints. And the same types of prints were found in La Madeira, which is either a copycat or is interesting because it might be the same craft. But it was just interesting. There was no footprints there from any humans. There weren't tennis shoe marks or boot marks or anything like that. So it's just, and even if it lasted 2.5, 3 minutes, the amount of detail that Lonnie was able to remember is astounding. And it just is a testament to him being kind of a perfect witness, because he didn't even know what he was looking at the time. He wouldn't immediately go, oh, I'm seeing a UFO and aliens. He just was baffled by what he was seeing. He was trying to figure out. And even after the case, I think Sergeant Chavez thinks that it was a black project. And that's why if he did see the craft leaving, which it seems like he might have caught a glimpse of the craft leaving, he got there so quickly that he didn't want to talk about it, because he figured it's a black project, I'll get into trouble, and there's no point in bringing it up.
Now, Captain Holder of the Air Force has spoken publicly about this case, and of course, so has Hynek. And Hynek did send letters and things out describing, and including Chavez, all describing Lonnie Zamora as not only honest, but Lonnie saw what he saw. He saw a craft land and take off. And we have to take this very, very serious. And that is coming from Hynek and Captain Holder, who was from the Air Force, right?
Yeah, Captain Holder was the upper range commander. He was called to get down there quickly. I think he lived in Socorro, or pretty close to the outskirts. But, Dr. Lincoln La Paz, who investigated the green meteorite, he was a meteorologist. He also, knew Lonnie to be an upstanding guy. Everybody that met Lonnie knew he was telling the truth. He was, you could tell he was freaked out by the whole thing. But that's why I put a chapter in there about Lonnie Zamora, because as we dug into these hoax theories about Lonnie getting pranked by college students, we realized that Lonnie didn't really piss anybody off in town. He was a good guy. He would sometimes let guys off. He tried to hit his quota for sure, but he didn't do anything to really upset college students or anybody there. He wasn't a drinker. He lived just a hard-working life and trying, making a living for his wife and his kids. And so there was absolutely nothing I found out that would indicate that he would want to fabricate a story like this, because it made his life miserable. And it wouldn't make any sense for a person like this to create this story. And you couldn't recreate the scene even if you tried to make a hoax. The fact that the 4 landing impressions were later determined to have been caused by a 9-ton vehicle landing at a slight angle and departing at a slight angle are just things that hoaxers wouldn't think of, and beyond the bush that was burned in half and the metal that was left on a rock. There's just a lot of evidence that, and even the Blue Book investigators' notes say, we haven't yet determined the vehicle that landed in the desert. So they keep calling it a vehicle. That means something landed there.
Chavez says that when he arrived on the scene, one of the bushes was still burning at that point, right?
It was still smoldering, yeah.
Yeah.
It was not, burning wouldn't be a correct word, and Ray would jump on me if I said that, and he's corrected me many times, but they were smoldering, and they were still kind of cool to the touch. It's interesting because the blue flame sliced one of those greasewood bushes in half, and those are very resinous bushes. They take a lot of heat. You can't really set them on fire unless you put a blowtorch on them. And this blue flame, it played over this bush for maybe 1 or 2 seconds as the craft was departing. For it to slice that creosote or greasewood bush in half requires an incredible amount of heat and energy. And in a 9-ton vehicle, if you were within 30 or 40 feet of a propellant-driven vehicle made by man, you would have been incinerated or blown about 43 feet through the air. And so the fact that Lonnie was really close to this blue flame that was knifing to the ground tells you it wasn't a propellant. It was some type of subatomic particles hitting the ground at light speed that were somehow lifting this 9-ton craft through some type of engine that we have no idea how it works.
Now, let's talk about this VHS video before the break, the Lost Socorro footage. What was in this video?
That was from the TV show Sightings, which was one of the only shows to do, an excellent job on Socorro. They really did a good recreation, but there had been a woman that watched their recreation on the TV show Sightings. It was in the 90s. The moderator was an former Air Force captain, I believe. But well done show. And this woman, had submitted a VHS tape that she said when she was a kid, they had been in Socorro, and a policeman had led them to the site of a UFO. I don't think it was Lonnie, but I think that her father was well connected, I think, and he had just, as going through town, the policeman had told them what was going on, and everybody was at the site at the time. The whole town knew about it, so they were trampling all over the site. But they went down there, and he had a color camera in 1964, which a lot of people didn't have. My dad did, so I know they were in existence. They were bulky and hard to load, but they had footage of being on the site. So showed this little girl going, poking a stick in the burned bush, showed all the people standing around, and showed some of the indentations. And I remembered seeing that, and that was the film I promised James Fox that I would find and get to him. And it took me, about 6 or 8 months to find it. I went around the world, and it was in my own back door, but that's a whole chapter in the book about the research we did to try to figure out who was the owner of that footage.
And anything else significant about that footage, though?
Well, it was the only footage I know of that was taken at the scene that close to the event. All the photographs and everything that were previously taken, it was reported, were confiscated by the investigators, the FBI and Project Blue Book and military. So it was probably didn't know that it actually existed, but it's just rare because it shows that the event happened, things were there. It just shows it was only a couple days later, I guess, but it showed the charred bushes and the fact that the indentations had the ring of rocks around them. And it was a journey, man, just to figure out who had that and where I could get it. And gosh, I called every production place in the country and actually other countries, and I had another country offer me a copy of that tape for $400, and it turned out that a MUFON member had recorded it and sent it to me for free in the mail.
Now, there are also reports, I've seen a couple of them, that are photographs that were taken at the scene, and one of them or two actually captured the object in the background. Where did any of this pan out?
Well, the pictures were taken by Ray, and when we were on a show recently, Ray called in to clarify on that. What happened was it looked like Ray had captured a couple of these craft in the image itself, but when he finally found the negative, he said that the images did not show up in the negative. And so I just have to believe that that's, that they were an artifact or some type of scratching. I mean, one of them looked just like what Lonnie has described. So it was either a tick that was smudged on the print, or it was just, he said it was an artifact that didn't show up on the negative. So I have to take him at his word that perhaps it was nothing. It's interesting because in one of the pictures that I got from the Blue Book files I believe Ray took it of Hynek taking a picture towards the departure location, there does seem to be something in the sky on the left in that image. It's really weird. When you blow it up, it's kind of round and egg-shaped, but it could just be an artifact because those are old images. But there was supposedly images that were taken by other people that were sent to Lonnie too, but that kind of disappeared. And it's just one of those stories that you try to, it's almost like trying to find the alien, from Roswell. You keep getting stories that somebody has the image or has a picture and it just never pans out.
Our guest tonight is, I'm sorry, Ben, go ahead.
Oh, no. So, I thought we had something with Ray's picture, but Ray said that those images, what we saw in the picture itself, were not in the negative. So we have to determine that they were just artifacts that were scratched into the image.
Yeah, when I saw the pictures, I was like, aha, there is something there, but they're not in the original negative. So that answers that question. Our guest tonight, Ben Moss, and his new book, which is out. You can go to Ben's Facebook page. You can click right there, send him a private message. It's called Not of This World, the 1964 Socorro UFO with Humanoids. Witness Policeman Lonnie Zamora. Let's take our break right here. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with Ben when we come back. Now, when we return, we're going to talk about that symbol on the outside of the craft. This is where things for me get really crazy. Stay with us. This is Fade to Black.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Do you want to be an official Fadernaut? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
Telepath is a weekly digital newsletter filled with the latest paranormal news, trending topics, and fresh articles from some of the most popular critical thinkers in the community today. Stay informed on your favorite paranormal podcasts and live streaming talk shows. Interact with the Telepath and upload your paranormal story or pics. It could be featured in an upcoming edition. Sign up right now for the free Telepath newsletter at paranormal.radio. That's paranormal.radio.
Including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Ben Moss is here. We're talking about his new book about the 1964 Socorro UFO landing, witnessed by Policeman Lonnie Zamora. Tomorrow night, right here, Seth Breedlove joins us to announce his new film, The Mothman Legacy. Wednesday night, Greg House talking about the singularity, and Thursday night's another Fader night with open lines all night long. Tonight, it's Ben Moss. And Ben, when we get to, and your research and reporting on this was absolutely amazing, about the red symbol seen on the side of the craft by Lonnie. And it gets twisted pretty quick here out of the gate that afternoon out there in Socorro. Now, let's actually start here. The symbol changed that afternoon. What did Lonnie first say about the symbol, the very first reporting before Captain Holder got there?
Lonnie had described to, I think it was Ned Lopez, the dispatcher, or one of the officers had described what Lonnie told them as El Invito de Tres Líneas. I'm terrible with Spanish, but basically said an inverted V with three lines underneath it. And that has become a point of contention, and the one thing about the symbol I'll say is it's not as important as to what the true symbol was as to the fact there was a symbol, because you have two really strange things about this case. You have an unusually shaped craft, an egg-shaped craft, and you have a craft with a symbol. I mean, probably less than 1% of the cases of UFO reports have a symbol on them. So the fact that the symbol was has all its problems now is probably a pretty good job by the Air Force of muddying the waters and confusing what was seen. And there's reasons for that.
Yes, there are. Now, so we have it established early on before, and Captain Holder is important here. Now, Captain Holder, speaking about this case publicly, I think he's a career Air Force military guy, by the book, and appears to be a very nice guy. And I think that he has been pretty honest about Lonnie Zamora and what possibly happened out there in the desert. But that being said, the inverted V with the three lines before Captain Holder got there was one thing, but then Captain Holder gets there and that symbol suddenly changed. And is that because, well, why do you think Captain Holder may have run interference on this part of the story?
There's a couple of good reasons. The first one would be, let's put out a fake symbol, so if we get other reports of the craft using the fake symbol, it's just copycat reports. Another reason could be, look, we may have, you may have seen some type of black project with something we've never seen before, so let us investigate the symbol you saw and see if we can figure out who owns it. But probably the primary reason was just to put out something that I think Holder probably made up on the fly, the umbrella with the arrow, just to see if anybody else reported it so we could discount those reports. And, Ray, in his excellent book, Socorro Saucepan and Pentagon Pantry, has a letter from Captain Holder's son where he says, yes, my father told me that I had Lonnie sign an obscured symbol that I had changed. And so just investigating the symbol itself was interesting because I found a newspaper report that said it was drawn on a paper sack. But then Dave Rudiak, who let me use his research, said it was printed on a corner of a page from a Boy's Life magazine that would be in the police station. And then you have other reports of it drawn on other things. And so I think Lonnie probably drew the inverted V of 3 bars on a paper sack that would be in the desert, blown in there in this arroyo where a lot of things get caught in that depression. They went back to the police station. Holder drew another symbol because when you look at the symbol that Lonnie signed, that's not his handwriting on the symbol. Somebody else drew that symbol and Lonnie signed it. Any handwriting expert will tell you those are two different forms of handwriting. And we have Holder's son confirming that his father obscured the symbol. So it makes sense from the intelligence point of view to not let that out, keep a few things close to the vest.
Why do you, and the third possibility is Holder knew that inverted V with the 3 stripes meant something else. And that couldn't get out into the public, and it had to get squashed right away. That's a third possibility that's pretty strong.
Yeah, I mean, the link that I put to Captain Holder's interview, he seems pretty baffled. But in that interview, when he talks about, he believed Lonnie and believed he was an honest man, he did say, we thought it was maybe, a vertical takeoff vehicle or something like that. But the thing to remember is that he was the upper range commander at White Sands, so he knew everything that flew on that day. He also could access the records and could determine that, as they did, that nothing was flying at that time in their area of the day, and actually a lot of the radars weren't even on.
And so now, has this inverted V with 3 stripes under it, has that been seen anywhere else in the world?
There was one report that I did find, and it was, I believe the Corral Lorenza had uncovered this report of an Air Force officer that was somewhere near White Sands, and he said, look, I just saw the craft, the egg-shaped craft, and they said, what did it look like? And he said, it looked like just like what Lonnie Zamora had described with the symbol. And then he said it landed at, I believe, Hollerman. And then they put some pressure. The Lorenzos were good investigators with ARPA back in the day. They put a little pressure on the base, and the base admitted that they had objects on radar that day. And then you have a report of a landed craft with 4 legs, an egg-shaped craft, that a military officer unloaded his pistol at Hollerman. And so there's definitely corroborating evidence on the same time period that this craft was seen in multiple places. The guy in the plane that saw it, we never got his name or anything, but it's in the report that the Air Force admitted that they had something flying around on radar. When the night of the event, the radars were usually, and it wasn't unusual at the time, were turned off because nothing was going on in that area. You're out in the middle of nowhere. But they apparently caught it like a day or two later when this other incident happened.
Now, what do you make of the new version of this symbol, apparently created by Captain Holder? What did that resemble? Did that look like anything else also?
It looked a little bit like the Astro Power symbol that was uncovered in the research, but it had an arrow with kind of a bar over the top of it. But when we investigated Astro Power, they were a software company. They never made any flying vehicles. There was a paper company that also had a symbol like that, but they were a paper company.
Yeah, I looked at those. I looked at those symbols too, and they weren't even close. To me,
No.
I mean, Lonnie would make that kind of mistake.
Yeah, and he was close. He said they were about 2.5 feet tall, and in red, and they seemed to, and the V seems to be pointing to the thruster where the blue flame came out. The 3 bars might signify radioactivity or emissions of energy. And so the V with 3 bars could just mean that, don't stand here when engaged, you'll get cooked. It could just be a warning sign. Red is the color of fire, it's the color of blood. It's usually, for humans at least, it's a symbol of danger, but that might be more of a universal thing. It just seemed like the thruster was located exactly where that V was pointing, and when I looked up the symbol trying to find something else that resembled it, the only thing that was close was radiation symbols. It kind of looked a little bit like a radiation symbol. There was an alchemy symbol that was close to, had an inverted V with 1 bar, but that stood for some type of metal. So I really never found in any records of any writings an inverted V with 3 bars having any meaning whatsoever.
Now, what do we deduce from that? What have you deduced from that? Why change the symbol? I know you just gave me 2 reasons, but if this is extraterrestrial, which everything is pointing in that direction, and you combine everything else that Lonnie has described, the roar, then it was silent, the speed that it flew away, of course, the small creatures. We have that, and we have a symbol that we can't identify on the side that was changed by the Air Force and included in all the future documentation. What do we deduce from all of this? Why change the story? Why take this approach, and why misidentify the symbol?
Well, I think to see if anybody else came up with said, look, I saw a craft, but it didn't have what you told me. I saw a craft that had an inverted V or 3 bars. Then they'd be on to another sighting. I think the other fear could have been that, as top secretly cleared as Captain Holder and some of these other gentlemen were, they still might have run into a black project they weren't supposed to be aware of. So why not bury that symbol, find out if they're supposed to be talking about it before they get court-martialed, and then see if there's clearance to, just to go with stay with the fake symbol or say, okay, we got it wrong, it was this. There was probably a fear that they were still dealing with something that was so top secret they weren't private to it.
I knew there was something that reminded me of Lonnie Zamora's craft. Mork from Ork. Yeah.
Right.
Too close to the fire sometimes. I just completely forgot about that. And I was waiting for this. It finally popped up in Twitter, right? Well, what about the Tic Tac, right? And the descriptions that are modern, that have happened recently in the last 3 years. Of course, we have this Tic Tac incident. Do you think that they are possibly related?
Well, there's a couple things with the Tic Tac is interesting because it's very close to an egg-shaped object. If an object's moving fast enough, it's really hard to discern the shape. And the Tic Tac is, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense from an aerodynamic standpoint, but of course, if these things don't need to use our laws of physics, if they're really advanced, it doesn't matter what shape they are. But the interesting thing, and it's going to come out on a show I did that'll be out this fall, but when I was in Socorro the second time with Tony, and I was standing right at the landing site, I noticed out of the corner of my eye, and Tony didn't see it, I saw an object coming over the rise and kind of ground terraining, just rising and lowering itself in relation to the terrain. And it was shaped like a Tic Tac. It was probably about 6 inches long, And I played pro tennis. I've played tennis at a high level. I can watch a tennis ball move at 120 miles an hour, and I was tracking this thing. It was definitely ground terraining, and then it went over the berm to my left and then shot off into the sky. And it was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. It was about as big as my fist, probably, but shaped like a Tic Tac. And I mentioned that on camera, so that might come out later. But it's just interesting that I saw that at the site of an egg-shaped craft. The Tic Tac, I did run into somebody that told me on a personal side note, he was a physicist. He said that he was in California at the time. They were going out, there was a big rollout to sea, and he was cleared. He asked, what's the big deal? Why is everybody going out to sea? And he goes, well, they're going to test a new top secret Air Force drone. And that's just a story I heard. But, I think the performance of the Tic Tac, if that's one of our drones, then somebody's got tech that everybody else should know about, because I just can't see that as being our technology.
Now, what about, there's the other rumors that have been around Socorro for years that there was some debris recovered. What can you tell us about that?
Well, when we were in Socorro, Tony and I were at a restaurant, it's well-known, great steakhouse. The owner, it's funny because a lot of guys that were the bartenders and worked at restaurants, a lot of these guys were engineers, and a lot of them had PhDs. They just had other jobs while they were, getting a degree, and then they, kept doing it. But this guy was an engineer also, and he told me that a couple of kids had found what looked like a computer board on the ground, and it had showed up. He had given it to his dad, who was an engineer, and they were all trying to figure out what it was. And in hindsight, they realized it was modern day computer electronics. And that's just a story. I can't really prove that that's true or not. But then when I was talking to James Fox, he had heard through another source that there was something on the ground that was found. So it was interesting to hear that from him, finding that same information from another source, but it's just a story, can't prove anything, might or might not be true. It's just, gosh, after 60 years or so, it's just tough to figure out what might not have happened. And the sad thing is that I know that Lonnie's house got robbed, and anything that might have been, sitting around was probably picked up in the robbery, and it's just a shame that happened. I think that happened a couple of years ago after he had passed. But it's just one of those stories, you take it for what it is, and it just adds to the myth of the whole enigma we're trying to solve.
What's Ray's position today? I mean, you've had so much interaction with him, and he was on the scene, and he was collecting evidence and interviewing right from the very beginning. What's his position?
He's the same. ET is really the only good explanation for it, and the gravity of it, also pushed Dr. Hynek in the direction to stop debunking, because after the Michigan, swamp gas fiasco, and then with Socorro really showing him what a real case looked like, he went off and formed CUFOS, the Center for UFO Studies, and started investigating these things for real. Probably still worked for the CIA late in his life, but he was a believer at that point. Ray believed that everything that Lonnie said was true. All my research showed that everything that Lonnie said was true. And when you look at all the evidence and all the research the government did, and the documents I have that showed it wasn't Project Cloud Gap, it wasn't vertical takeoff vehicles, it wasn't the lunar lander, it wasn't a Bell helicopter, there's really nothing left to come to the conclusion, because my 6 explanations were, I think, hallucination, hoax, made-up story, weather event, ET, Black Project. And when you really boil it down and look at all the evidence, you have to eliminate just about everything except for the ET conclusion.
Wasn't there another eyewitness account about an egg-shaped object scanning the mountain there with, I believe, a red beam of light hitting the ground, going back and forth across the mountain?
Yeah, there was M Mountain, which has an M on it, for the New Mexico Institute college up there. There was a craft that was going back and forth, almost like it was searching for something. And there were, like we said, there were multiple reports. There were a couple of reports of people's cars stalling when the same type of object passed over them, one on the same day. And that's interesting because when Lonnie drove up on this craft, it was landed. And so there was no chance for him to try to turn his car on when the engine was engaged to see if it interfered with his car. That would indicate some type of electromagnetic pulse. But the fact that other people reported their car, stopping as this object passed over in that area at that time tells you that it, definitely was some type of exotic propulsion.
There's one part of this case that I think all of us get stuck on, where it forces you to just go, you know what, Lonnie did see what he saw, and that is he thought he saw an overturned car. And when I think of that, I sometimes I picture the bottom of a car, right, which is going to be dark. And that would make any sense. 4 tires, you're looking at the bottom of a car. Well, that would be an overturned car. That's not what Lonnie was describing. He was describing an object, a car, like a white car, on its side where you're looking at the roof of the car. And you're looking that fits this. That's what he thought that he saw. And he never changed his story to go from that, because you would ask yourself, how would a policeman make this kind of mistake? An overturned car? Well, everybody knows what that looks like. Well, that's what Lonnie thought that he saw. And that's what forced him to drive off of the road, because he thought that there was obviously seriously injured people at this point. But when he finally gets close enough to it, it wasn't an overturned car. It was this egg-shaped object on these 4 legs. I think that is one of the most crucial parts of Lonnie's story. What do you think?
Yeah, the fact that his greatest concern before he even got there was that whatever he saw across the sky was heading towards a dynamite shack. So even if he changed it to the fact that he thought that maybe a white van or something had overturned, he was concerned that somebody was injured. And his car was only 3 weeks old. He rotated it with another officer, but he had just gotten his car about 3 weeks before. So the fact that he was risking, and we took a 2014 rental car on the same route and just beat the crap out of this car trying to follow the same path that Lonnie did. For him to drive a new car up there just showed you his nature. He was concerned that somebody was hurt. He wanted to find out if the dynamite shack was, close to whatever was going on, because it could be an explosion, and then he would have casualties. So everything points to the fact that what led him up the hill was his concern that there was somebody in trouble.
And going back to the way that I feel, and I'm only looking at the correspondence from Hynek, there were those out there that were trying to tarnish and diminish this Socorro incident. And I don't want to get into the various debunkers and skeptics inside and outside of Washington on this case. But Hynek did not bend, did he? Hynek absolutely stood up for Lonnie Zamora.
Yeah, a lot. I think Donald Menzel and some other people are like, can't we just call this an hallucination? And, it's like Hynek said, no, we don't get the kind of evidence, the holes in the ground, the burned bush from a hallucination. And so the pushback, it got to the point where I think that's what turned Hynek, because everybody was trying to come up with anything except an unidentified explanation. And that was the importance of all these files and the letters back and forth with Hynek, because it just tells you that Hector Quintanilla, the head of Project Blue Book, was, he got a top secret clearance, and he firmly believed he was going to find this craft sitting in a hangar at White's Ends or Almagardo or any of these military bases. And the fact that all the divisions of the government were all looking at each other going, who the heck built this thing, is an interesting, thing that I bring up in the book, because when you're trying to figure out what this thing was, if it's one of your own black projects, you can't find out about it. That's a problem, because you've got a secret kept from the same, country. If it's a black project from another country, you have a much bigger problem. So the fact that they looked through every intelligence agency, Bell Labs and Hughes and aircraft and all the people that could build anything that could fly and still couldn't come up with an answer, just tells you that they were really freaked out about the fact they couldn't solve it. Something landed in the desert in between two major military bases. At the time, it wasn't tracked on radar. We only had one witness at the time, and they couldn't figure out what it was. Just told you that they didn't want to show how helpless they really were, but they were helpless. The notes show that they were completely baffled by it, kept trying to come up with these explanations and force them. And that's another point that I brought up, is they had plenty of opportunities to come out and say, look, we discovered this was a black project. We can't talk about it. Case closed. They never did that either, which is really interesting, because I think nowadays that's what they'd probably do. They could just say, look, black project, can't talk about it. It's not for public consumption. And the fact that they never, ever tried to say, there were a few documents that said probably was a vertical takeoff vehicle, but when you look at all the investigation and do your homework, there was no VTL vehicle. There was nothing flying in the area at that time. There was actually the wind at the time was 40 to 45 miles an hour out of the southwest, which was pretty strong. You just don't fly a whole lot of things, don't launch balloons and things like that when you have a front moving through.
And also, especially if we looked at other craft from that time period, if it was ours, we would have seen things. Lonnie would have seen things on the outside of this craft that he could identify. But there were no doors. There were no windows. There were no wind screens. There were no wind shields. There weren't any creases. There wasn't any metal described by Lonnie. By all accounts, it was just a smooth, white, egg-shaped craft without anything that he could identify on it outside of the red symbol, right?
Yeah, it was kind of a chrome-shaped white. He never, I don't believe he ever saw four legs, but in his description, he saw two of the gear, and then he said apparently there were four because we had four indentations, because he was only seeing one side of the craft. But, it really didn't have anything besides the symbol. There was no seams, there were no rivets, there was no airfoils, there was no wings, no stabilizers or anything. And like I mentioned in the book, if it was our tech, we'd all have our personal flying eggs right now. And it's just not a shape that's viable to fly around the sky using our current propulsion technology.
Yeah, and of course, windows. Something to see outside of the craft. And which, again, with the lunar lander, we had two windows on it. Anything else that is terrestrial, you need to have windows. We didn't have things that were windowless at that time. We certainly didn't have that technology. Let's take our break right here. Ben, you stay right there. So much more to talk about. When we come back, this is another part of the case that I always found interesting, and that was the proposed hoaxes around this case to help explain it away. We'll get to all of that when we return tonight. Ben Moss on Fade to Black. Stay with us.
Hi, everybody. This is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station. Salt Lake City, Utah. Van Buren, Arkansas.
Why is it we're not very good with our health regimen until it's too late? We don't put oil in the car until the engine blows up. When the body's out of balance, your health is not so good. Give your body some love. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Try our Life Change Tea, which cleanses you from harmful intruders. A clean colon is one of the ways to bring the body in balance. We also carry organic supplements to help you get where you need to go. So do your body a favor. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. You can even visit our sales page to save some dough. Does anybody call money dough anymore? Anyway, if you're looking for short, helpful health tips, go to YouTube and punch in Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. So, log on to getthetea.com, shop, get balanced, then learn some cool tips at Health Matters Now. You'll be glad you did. That's getthetea.com.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRAradio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from Rivermoon. Just click on the Rivermoon Coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B Blend. Let's face it, you've always wanted to do a sky watch and see your first UFO. Today, it's easy. Just get your own HP7 3B Cobalt Jimmy Church Edition night vision goggles from Hoffman's Optics. This is the same U.S. military system that I use, featuring a Generation 3 blue phosphor image tube. That's right, it's blue, not black and green. This is the only blue system in the world, and it's waterproof, lightweight, combat-proof, simple to use, and ready to go. Hoffman's Optics help create night vision sky watches, and now you can see what everyone has been talking about each night from your own backyard. Just call 760-231-9929. That's 760-231-9929. You can click on the banners on our site or visit UFOnightvisiongoggles.com. That's UFOnightvisiongoggles.com. Go back, Lee Tappy.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. KGRAradio.com.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer. Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com.
Telepath is a weekly digital newsletter filled with the latest paranormal news, trending topics, and fresh articles from some of the most popular critical thinkers in the community today. Stay informed on your favorite paranormal podcasts and live streaming talk shows. Interact with the Telepath and upload your paranormal story or pics. It could be featured in an upcoming edition. Sign up right now for the free Telepath newsletter at paranormal.radio. That's paranormal.radio.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Ben Moss discussing his new book on the 1964 Socorro, New Mexico UFO landing, witnessed by Policeman Lonnie Zamora. So much is in this new book, and you can click on the links over at jimmychurchradio.com. Head over to Ben's Facebook page. Ben self-published this book. The only way to get it, well, this easiest way, is to head over to Ben's Facebook page and contact Ben, and he will tell you what to do to get a copy of the book.
It's an incredible read, and I highly recommend it. Ben, the amount of work put into this, 5 years, it is definitely represented in this book, man. You did a great job on it. I want to move to another part of the story, which is always out there when you look at the Socorro case, which is the hoax side of this, that maybe Lonnie was hoaxed. There's another hoax involved here. There's been several different theories and ideas put forward. And I want to get into that part of the story because we have the possibility of university students being involved in this. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that all started with a letter with Sterling Colgate was discussing something off topic with another person, and that person asked about the Socorro incident, and Sterling, I think it was Linus Paulding, the letter was to him, but Sterling said that he had on good authority that it was a student hoax, and the students had left, and he said cheers. And so that one sentence kind of started this whole fabrication, really, that Sterling had made up at the time and then tried to cover. Because as we dug into it, the main debunkers of Socorro kind of, hooked their horses to this one piece of material. And as I dug into this, I talked to people that were students at the time at New Mexico Tech, and they all said that this was ludicrous, that first of all, it was near exams and students really didn't want to do anything at study at the time. And secondly, students didn't really go into Socorro much because there wasn't much to do. They'd rather stay on campus. And most of the pranks that were pulled on campus. They did a lot of pranks on campus. And one of the gentlemen that I found on an email thread, he was like the guy that pulled off most of the pranks. And he said, look, I was there at the time. I knew all the students that did this stuff. In fact, I was guilty of some of them myself. If any of the students had pulled this off, I would have known about it, and it never happened. So as I dug further and actually communicated with the main person promoting this hoax theory, he mentioned the initials of one of these so-called students. And it didn't take me long to actually find out who these two students supposedly were. And after finding out who they were, one of them wasn't on campus at the time, and the other one had no idea why Sterling threw him under the bus, was the term used. And so both of them denied ever having anything to do with it. And when you look at the evidence and what was available in 1964, to replicate all the evidence that was left behind is virtually impossible. And the fact that when the police officers got there about 3 minutes after the event, they found no human footprints, no evidence of any pyrotechnics, no evidence of any hoax, of any chemicals, of any kerosene, of anything that would be needed to make the indentations, burn the greasewood bush in half, scrape one of these rocks with some metal. All the indications, would have been probably almost impossible to reproduce today. And the fact that you had to pull Lonnie from the street about a quarter mile into an exact spot in the desert, I just don't see how you could pull that off. But anyway, we needed to dig into that theory. And so the further we dug, the more we found that the hoax theory was based on one line from Sterling Colgate, who was a professor at the school, who we found out liked to party. He was, not to disparage him or anything, but he liked to get high. He liked to party with the students. And so I think he kind of told a white lie that ballooned into something else that he had to cover for, but he never provided any proof. And he said all this after Lonnie had passed away and couldn't, refute any of it. And so the hoax theory pretty much fell apart because I couldn't find any evidence that anybody could pull it off and that anybody had done it and that anybody could replicate it.
Well, okay. And to be clear here, what was proposed is that, and the letter is in the book. You guys can see a copy of the letter and the PS, by the way, that's below it, is that it was a candle in a balloon. And if I'm understanding everything, because it gets a little convoluted here, but that the students had a candle in a balloon in broad daylight. That doesn't make any sense. but that the balloon was attached to a cable to another car, and that there were two students out there pulling this hoax off in the middle of the desert, right? You would need a bunch of things here. You would need additional tire tracks. You would have to have, of course, the equipment and the cable and things, but there would have to have been students and their footprints and other evidence out there in the desert. None of this was found by Hynek or Ray Stanford or the Air Force or anybody else, right?
Yeah, and I know who promoted that theory, and I talked to that person several years ago, and as I discovered as I was talking to him, he had never been to the site. And I said, first of all, you can't even drive a car there because there's cactus and boulders and depressions, and I mean, you really can't, unless you're on the road, there's nowhere to go. And if you tow a balloon and a rope, it's not going to take off in any specific direction. It's probably just going to go straight up. And there's nowhere to hide. You can see in every direction once you're up on that rim out of that little depression. You can see in every direction for a long ways. A car would have kicked up dust. I mean, it's really ludicrous. But when I dug into the debunkers' theories, not a single one of those guys had ever been to the site. And as I say in my book, that's like being a murder investigator and never going to the scene of the crime to try to figure out the case.
Well, and Chavez, who was on the scene immediately, and when you talk about, 2 minutes after Lonnie calls him, he's there. Any evidence of any hoaxing going on, Chavez would be there as a witness to it. And he's a state that's their job, to go and catch somebody running around in the middle of the desert, kicking up dust and running around with a balloon. Chavez never reported anything like that, did he?
No, he actually looked in Lonnie's trunk to see if there was anything in his car, any shovels or anything. And he said that Lonnie looked white as a ghost when he got there, which for a Hispanic man is kind of hard. He knew that Lonnie was in some type of shock. But the first thing that they checked was that there was no footprints, no activity. Even the chemical analysis, which is in the documents that I have in the book, shows that there was no evidence of kerosene or gasoline or anything to burn the bush in half. There was no pyrotechnics to explain the wind down sound that he heard when that first engine cut off. And there was just nothing to indicate humans had been in the area for a while. It's just a depression that's really in the middle of nowhere. The first time we went there, we were with the editor from El Defensor Chieftain, and it was hard to find. He couldn't even remember how to get there. After about a half hour, we drive around the desert, we found the site. So it doesn't make any sense, and I don't see how you could get Lonnie to go from a road that's about a quarter mile away and pull him to that site with a candle and a balloon that's going against a 40-mile-an-hour wind.
And to be clear, Sergeant Chavez was there in about 2 minutes. Later on, Captain Holder was there. He had his team with him, and the official report is very clear. There were no footprints. They were looking for footprints. They didn't find any footprints. They only had the 4 landing gear indentations and a few circular depressions, possibly made by a ladder or something else that came out from the side of the craft. But there was nothing else that would indicate that there were humans or hoaxers on the scene.
Yeah, there was nothing there. There are, I think James Fox ran across this. It seems like before Dr. Hynek and Ray got there that they had kind of cordoned off the area and done a pretty good search. And in the Blue Book files and the files that were on Craigslist that weren't released to the public at the time, it does say, we did chemical analysis. We didn't find anything. We did a search for footprints. All we found were the 4 indentations, the 2 circular marks from what could have been a ladder, and then the weird prints from where the creatures were standing. And so to suggest that college students fooled the combined forces of the FBI, the CIA, and Project Blue Book, and the Air Force that couldn't figure out it was a hoax, they would have been if it was, they would have been on that campus in no time, got the students, and there would have been big trouble. It just doesn't make any sense. If you really look at the data that's available through the research, you'll find that there's absolutely no way you can prove that a student could even pull that off.
And then there were the reports of that this was just a hot air balloon with, gas heating up the hot air balloon, or possibly a helium balloon, and that's what Lonnie saw. What can you say about that part of it? And the first comment, and even when I was looking at this case many, 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 many years ago, you would have seen, Chavez or anybody else would have seen a hot air balloon in the air because you have wide open sky. It's New Mexico. You're going to see that for an hour or two after the fact. And it was too windy to launch a hot air balloon, right?
Yeah, I checked with I think in Albuquerque is one of the hot air balloon museums, one of the biggest ones in the country. But they said that you wouldn't launch a balloon when the front's coming through, and a two-man balloon would require a pretty large flame going up into a canopy. It wouldn't be going down and burning a bush in half, or there's no landing gear. It's a gondola. You don't launch at that time of the evening though with those type of weather conditions. They made it real clear that there were no launches scheduled. You wouldn't have two kids going out in the desert launching a balloon, or they would have probably killed themselves. But then the object went into a stiff 40-mile-an-hour front that was coming in at the time, and went about 6 miles in a minute or two, which is a pretty good speed. So all indications are that none of the actions of this craft are anywhere close to a balloon.
And then we have this letter. This is from 1981 from C.B. Moore, who's a professor, atmospheric physics, and chairman at the Legmar Laboratory. He says here, and I'm quoting, "In regard to the unidentified sighting by Officer Zamora in 1964, I have investigated this case ad nauseum, right? And can assure you that there is little probability that it had anything to do with students or the Institute. If we can believe," and it goes on, Officer Zamora, he says, "Then it appears that he saw a lunar landing module, the LEM, but his observation was at least 12 months before the module was first tested here." That is, if there's a, you know what I mean? If there's a smoking gun, is this it?
Yeah, it's just more confirmation that, people in the know that had the ability to look at all the data just couldn't find any evidence of this type of thing happening. And it was, when I found that document, it was just another confirmation that other people inquired that were either associated with the university or with the military and could not figure out, they had to dismiss the fact that it didn't appear to be a hoax. And the fact that this guy, Mr. Moore, would go to the great lengths to even look into it just tells you, even in '84, there was a lot of interest in this case, because here we are in 2000, and it's still listed as an unknown, because there's nothing to explain what Lonnie saw there.
Now, when you look at, and you go back and look at the historical images of the original LLRV, which was the prototype for the lunar lander, which they had to do. They had to test the landing gear and the engines and things. This is nothing but an erector set, right? It's the opposite of an egg-shaped craft. This is a spindly prototype that Lonnie would have identified right away if it indeed was that.
Yeah, the first time it actually lifted off the ground, it wasn't supposed to. It kind of freaked out the one pilot that was sitting in it. It wasn't designed to fly for longer than, I don't think the test flights lasted more than 2 minutes at the longest. Some, I think, 30 to 60 seconds usually, because this thing was designed to fly outside of atmosphere, and it certainly wouldn't, go off 6 miles off into the distance. Everything about the lander is wrong. It wasn't operational at the time. Their own documents that are in the book show that they investigated the lunar lander, but that they had determined that there was no way it could be that. And Hughes Laboratory and NASA and Bell Labs, they all made parts for the lunar lander, had all these documents that showed, because they asked about the struts, what were the landed configuration of the struts, which none of the struts ever matched the 4 indentations of the craft that landed Socorro. So they kept running into these dead ends. There's documents about inquiring about the symbol, and the government came back and said, no, all of our craft have an N followed by these numbers or this format, which certainly wasn't an inverted V or 3 bars. So it's interesting to see how frustrating their search was, and they kept running into dead ends everywhere they looked.
Now, one of the coolest documents in the book from Project Blue Book, you have, I think it's in Chapter 8 or Chapter 9, but it says Project 10073 record card. And what is interesting here, because it's got it all, the date, 24th of April, 1964, witness, and the comments here, it says, brief summary of sighting of landing by Lonnie Zamora, see case files, right? But in box number 11, and everything's here, the time and so forth, source, civilian, and so forth. But it says in box number 12, conclusions, right, was balloon, possibly a balloon, right, probably a balloon, a war aircraft, war astronomical, blah, blah, blah. And then it goes to other, right? And it says unidentified. And then in box number 11, here are the comments. I want your reaction to this. Initially believed to be observation of lunar module type configuration. Effort to date cannot place vehicle at site. Case carried as unidentified pending additional data. That's pretty remarkable for Project Blue Book, isn't it?
Yeah. They inquired, and all these guys had to answer the inquiries, and they said that the test that they had scheduled for April 24th was canceled. And the test was to drop, to test the integrity of the struts by dropping it from a Bell helicopter a few feet off the ground. And that, eventually became one of the explanations. It was a Bell helicopter towing the lunar lander, which is ludicrous at best. But they quickly dismissed that because, the companies that were building this all said it just was not operational. It really, I think it first actually had its real test flight in October of that year, much later. So the whole point of the lunar lander, it's kind of like when you talk about Roswell and just go weather balloon. That's the default explanation for Socorro was lunar lander. And a lot of people believe that, but the evidence certainly points 100% away from that being an explanation at all.
Well, that's what Hynek tried to do, right? He tried to get his answers. So he went to all of the companies, all of the civilian companies. He went to all the branches of the government. He contacted everybody about what types of black projects, black programs, public programs, any craft that could have been out there in the desert, because they needed that answer. They wanted to plug that in. And they did not get that, did they? They absolutely did their best to chase it down.
Yeah, and that's why if you remember the interview that I link in the book with Captain Holder, even he was baffled that the Joint Chief of Staffs were contacting them 6 months after the incident and kept asking him questions. And he's like, I can't understand why they're still on me about this case. And that is just an indication that they didn't have an answer, and they really wanted an answer, because the point I brought up in the book was the great fear then would be, all right, if it's not a black project, then either China or Russia has something that we're not aware of, and that's even more terrifying. So the scramble was on to find an explanation, because they probably would have felt a lot better if they had found a terrestrial explanation. But because they kept not finding an answer, that probably scared them even more.
It's such a great find with Rob Mercer. And the documents, not all of them, but a bunch of them are reproduced here, and they are just a fantastic read. And you go through, and you can see that, and I'm so glad that Rob was, cruising around Craigslist, right, to look at this, because the breakdown of the investigation is here: radar surveillance, soil samples, the check about helicopter activity in 1964, right? It's all here. It's all in the report, including the radioactivity and so forth. Very interesting. And the VTOL and how they went to go look at any type of aircraft, additional witnesses. It's all here in these Craigslist documents. It's absolutely a fantastic read.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'd never realized how hard it is to write a book with the intent of telling the story completely and truthfully using all the available data and anything else I could uncover. If I realized it was going to be this hard, I probably wouldn't have done it in the first place. But I'm glad I did, because I really wanted to get the story set straight. All the data is there in the book. You can make your own decision as to what might have happened, but I just wanted to present all sides of the story with documentation showing what's right, what's not quite right, and what you need to think about, so that we can correct as I said in the beginning, history is told by the winners, and over time it's confabulated and it's told the wrong way. And the old thing, if you tell 10 people a story, by the time it gets to the 10th person, if they each tell one person, it's completely different from the story that the first person told. So I felt like amalgamating all the data and bringing it back together in one place would give the reader a chance to see how important this case was, how a close encounter of the third kind with a lot of evidence actually did occur in the United States, and was also probably one of the reasons why Steven Spielberg did his movie and had Dr. Hynek on as a consultant on that. But very important case, and it just didn't want to be lost in time.
No, and it is an important case. And when everybody gets the book and you start looking through this and you look at how doggedly Quentin Tia and Hynek went after all of these companies, going, okay, what's up with your landing gear? What were you doing? What were you doing in this time period? This, and you see it right there, written on Wright-Patterson letterhead and Hughes Aircraft and everybody else replying back. Well, and you can see it right here, how they chased this down and came up with, well, you know what? This is going to remain unidentified. It's absolutely an incredible read. Thank you so much, Ben. The book is fantastic. Everybody can go to Ben's Facebook page. The links are at jimmychurchradio.com. Go say hello to Ben and tell him you want a copy of the book. Ben, I look forward to you and I hanging out again, hopefully sometime in 2021 when we get this year behind us.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thanks. Yeah, let's put COVID behind us and move forward.
That's what I'm talking about, Ben Moss. Thank you, Ben. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, sir. You do the same.
Ben Moss. Very simple. The links are over at jimmychurchradio.com. And Ben has self-published this book. It's a great read. Go and let him know over on Facebook, and he'll tell you what to do to get yourself a copy. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll be right back after this short break, and I'm going to open up the phone lines. Stay with me.
Here, and you are listening to my boy Jimmy Church on jimmychurchradio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I take Life Change Tea supplements every single day. It's what I do. Click on their banner at jimmychurchradio.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hello, my name is Billy Carson, and I am a best-selling author and the founder of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Together with my team, we have built an all-new conscious streaming TV platform designed with every family member in mind. If you have ever wanted to travel the world and attend lectures and workshops from your favorite speakers but weren't able to, look no further. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. There are dozens of workshops and lectures from speakers you know and love. We have also included amazing categories to assure that your consciousness is entertained and elevating on a daily basis. Amazing interviews, ancient history, ascension knowledge, wisdom teachings, documentaries, conspiracies, mysteries, health and fitness, conscious cooking, meditations, finance, yoga, and so much more. To start your free trial on any mobile device or computer, surf to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's Forbidden Knowledge with the number 4, ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Again, visit ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JamieChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Want to thank Ben Moss. What a great, compelling case. Socorro, 1964. Man, Lonnie Zamora. Absolutely incredible. I have just unlocked the phone lines right now as I sat down. 747-228-2051. 747-228-2051. I want to hear from you. This is one of the cases when we look back, and of course we have Roswell, and I've stated so many times that Travis Walton and Rendlesham are so important, and it's the Lonnie Zamora Socorro case that I keep going back to with just fascination. It is such a compelling case, one that, and we cannot ignore so many elements of this that happen so quickly. And first and foremost, when we break down the timeline and the way that Ben does this in his book, and he does it repeatedly from different witnesses and researchers that were there in a row, is the timeline of events. This entire sighting probably lasted no more than just a few minutes. And Sergeant Chavez of the State Police, the New Mexico State Police, was on the scene by his own account about 2 minutes. Everything happened with the radio dispatch. Lonnie saying, okay, he's pulling onto the scene. From there, he radios back out. Chavez is already listening to what is happening. He's en route. He gets there 2 minutes after Lonnie reached out a second time, and he's on the case, on the scene immediately. And what Lonnie told him as he arrived, what had just happened is all accounted for. Everything is right there. How it followed out after that, I got to stress this, is that Captain Holder of the United States Air Force is on the scene. He's got his people there. And just like Ben said, they immediately cordon off the area. And they are looking for other evidence. They're looking for footprints. They're looking for anything that they can find. The only thing that they found on the ground were these 4 impressions, and those were measured out. Those were there, and then the 2 round circular marks that were there. But there were no other additional footprints and any indication that there was anybody else at the scene except for Lonnie Zamora. Very, very interesting. And then, of course, J. Allen Hynek is on the scene. Ray Stanford is on the scene. There was, and I've read this over the years many times, there was like a house that was there that they were taking the witnesses into and interviewing. And Ray Stanford was part of that too as well. And trying to get everything that they could from the very beginning. Why was this of such importance to the FBI and the Air Force? And of course, Project Blue Book, immediately on this case. It's absolutely fascinating. And there's so much more to it. So again, I've opened up the phone line, 747-228-2051. And yes, I do have the phone lines open. Okay, 747-228-2051. Now, going back, there were so many things about this case that appeared to me to be changed. One of them is this red symbol on the outside of the craft. I have seen other drawings and things from around the world where it appears that this symbol was sighted elsewhere around the world. The thing is this. Let's go back to Lonnie's sighting. Lonnie's sighting, that symbol was changed. And the official references from that point forward was there was a curve on the top. There were sightings around the world, a couple with some drawings that had an inverted V with 3 lines through it. Some said that it was red, some not, but the sightings were confirmed outside of the United States. I find that very interesting. Why would the Air Force choose to change this? Captain Holder's never really come clean is not the right word, but his reasons for changing it, he's never said that he did change it, by the way. I don't believe. But why was it changed? Now, one of Ben's conclusions, and I tend to agree with this because I've done this myself, is you don't want to have copycat sightings out there, right? Inverted V with 3 stripes. I saw it with inverted V with 3 stripes. You don't want that. That makes a lot of sense. Or was there something else a bit nefarious about why it was changed? You would think that with Roswell that you don't want to change your story. You just want to keep it the same because once it's changed, people are going to ask, why are you changing the story? The copycat part of it, yeah, that holds water. It holds water because I've done the same thing. I've done the same thing. I've held back. I don't want everything out there because if I'm going to get other reports or I'm going to hear from I don't want anything tainted from something that I have said. Yeah. And I've done the exact same thing. And there's reasons for that for me personally. Could this be the same reasons with Captain Holder? I don't know. The other aspect of this, which is that it could be something from an aircraft company that was painted on the outside because there was dangerous flames coming from the bottom of the vehicle, and you want this indicated on the side. I haven't seen anything on any aircraft that is even close to this kind of symbol, and we would have seen it replicated on other aircraft, experimental or otherwise. It's not outside of the lunar lander, right? I haven't seen it. Look, you can go and look at an aircraft with an arrow. This is a step. This is not a step, right? This is a door handle, and you see the, and instructions how to open it with an arrow. We see that, but an inverted V with 3 stripes because of flames coming out, no. We don't see that on the back of aircraft with exhaust on the back of an aircraft. I have looked. I've gone and looked. I've tried to find it. I can't find it anywhere on our stuff. Now, the other part about this, where so much focus has been made over the years about this being a lunar lander being tested, if that was the case, Lonnie would have said just that. He would have seen the helicopter dropping it. He would have seen that. He would have said it, right? There wouldn't have been this entirely alternative view, which is an egg-shaped craft with 4 legs coming out. That is nothing close to anything that was being tested out there at that time for the lunar missions and Apollo and the lunar lander. They don't match at all, not even remotely. You can go back and look at any of a bunch of it is being posted here. And I want to thank Mark Tarana for showing film of the lunar lander being tested. Now, this is the LLRV. It doesn't have the top half of the lunar lander. But that is not what Lonnie Zamora saw. It's not even close. It doesn't even fit the description. To go back, and the references in the book about this are so clear. Hynek and Quintanilla, Hector, did everything they could about contacting every aircraft company and the Air Force and every government body that was doing testing out there at the time to see what they had, because they wanted the LLRV to be what Lonnie had seen. They could explain it away, which is what Project Blue Book did. They explained everything and debunked it. They could not do it with the Zamora case. All of the contacts and the letters and the responses with all of this as part of the Blue Book investigation is in the book. You can go and check it out for yourself. They did everything that they could. They needed that aha. Okay, so this is what it was, and that wasn't there. Also, the helo aspect of this, the helicopter aspect, Lonnie Zamora or anybody else in Socorro at that time would have seen a helicopter with the LLRV hanging from it, flying around Socorro. It would have been cited by everybody. There were no other eyewitness accounts like this. So that part of it, I think, could be taken off the table. And I think Lonnie would be honest and say, look, I saw the helo drop it and then come back and pick it up, and that's what I saw. That is not what the report said. It was an egg-shaped object, and he thought it was an overturned car. I think all of this, when you keep going back to the Socorro, New Mexico case, it is definitely unidentified. I can't draw any other conclusions than that. I can clearly deduce what Hynek and Quintanilla and others did which is scratch things off the list, which is, was it the LLRV that was being tested out there? No. And it wasn't ready for testing until October. This was April 24th, 1964. Very important part of this case. Fascinating. And then we get to, again, man, I don't even know if my, let me do this again. It's weird. 747-228-2051. 747-228-2051. And I can't tell. 747-228-2051. Normally the phone lines are overloaded right now, and I don't have that, so it just makes me wonder if there is something going on. All right. Back to the humanoids. What Lonnie, this goes back to the hoax part too as well, that there were kids from the university out there, New Mexico Tech out there in the desert, doing a hoax. Lonnie said specifically that he saw two humanoids about this tall outside of the craft. He then said when he took a second look, one of them was now in back of the craft, and he couldn't get a clear look. But the white overalls, coveralls, was always a strange description for me. What was it that Lonnie saw? What was he trying to describe? A one-piece uniform, a one-piece spacesuit, which he never said. He never went that far. But one of these figures turned and looked at Lonnie and saw Lonnie looking at him. And at that point, he thinks that they freaked each other out. He freaked out. He runs. The next thing he hears is what sounded like a hatch door closing twice, like ksh, and maybe ksh, something from the inside, like it was a double hatch. Very interesting description there. But he never described the face, even though they looked at each other. I'm telling you, you know when you see a human face. Nose, eyes, mouth, ears, you see a face. And you are able to describe that. He never said anything of the sort. And I find that interesting. So were they wearing a helmet? How did they know that they were looking at each other? I know he says that it turned and looked at him, but he never described any eyes. Nothing like that happened. So I find that description very, very interesting. What was it about the face that he saw? And he never, ever described anything about what the face looked like. Very interesting. If it's humanoid, you know it. If it's human, right, you would know it. Let's go to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
It's Mike.
Hi, Mike. Where are you calling from?
Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
Saskatoon. Yeah, right on, man.
Yeah, that's in. You know where that is.
I do know where that is.
Okay.
So what's on your mind?
I was just wondering about the aliens. Like, you know how they described them. Their, the aliens, their size.
Yes, he
like
said.
How tall were they?
He said about.
How tall the aliens were.
He said about 4 feet tall.
And do you know how wide they were at all?
I think he always described them. You need to turn me down in the background, but I think he always described them as being thin. Now, he never went full on gray, alien, spindly. He never described them like that, but he described them as being small. He never said that they were, fat, round. No, he never described them like that. He said that they were about this tall, right, as he was standing there. So about 4 feet tall and wearing white coveralls.
And I just have one more question. Are you there?
Yeah. What's your question?
I was just wondering if, you know that the inverted V with the 3 lines, right?
Yes.
You're describing? when Valiant Thor came? Wasn't that around the same time?
It was in the early 60s. I can check right now. Why do you bring that up? Did Valiant describe an inverted V?
I wasn't sure about that. That's what I was wondering about, if you knew that.
Okay, Valiant Thor. Let me back up here. Let's see. Okay, no, that would be, I'm in the wrong. Okay, Valiant Thor. There's a band called Valiant Thor. I didn't know that.
Really?
Oh man, that is just too funny.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, let's see. Let's go with this one. Created being. Let's see here. Let's see if I can get a date. It looks like, okay, 1957. And lived, lived under the Pentagon for 3 years until 1960. Yeah, that fits my timeline. I feel better about that. Yeah, I didn't think it stretched into 1964. So what do you when do you hear about something like this, Mike? What are your conclusions? Do you think that Lonnie Zamora actually encountered a UFO, unidentified object, not of this earth?
Yeah, well, in my opinion, yes.
What do you and why do you think they would change the description of the inverted triangle with 3 lines to something else? In this case, it was inverted with, I think, 1 line and a circle over the top of it, a curve.
It must have some sort of significance that they had knowledge from before, some other sightings or crashes that maybe they don't want to reveal.
I think you're right about that. And the technical aspect of this, where the Air Force, it seemed like they wanted it to be the lunar lander, the LLRV that was being tested out there, so they could just debunk this whole case. Just like Roswell and the crash dummies and Project Mogul, that all fell apart because the timing wasn't right for the period for 1947 in Roswell. Well, it appears to be the same thing in 1964 in Socorro, where the lunar lander wasn't ready for another 5 or 6 months to be tested. So therefore, that couldn't be what Lonnie had seen out in the desert. And when you look at pictures of the LLRV, obviously that's not a smooth white egg-shaped craft with 4 legs on it. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I agree with you. It doesn't seem like, it would be like that. I don't know. They kind of leave it vague, don't they? That way.
They do it that way on purpose, right? They'd rather have questions there than answers. But when you go back, and I want to thank you for the phone call, Mike. When you go back and you look at all of the Project Blue Book documents and all of the research that went into this in 1964, clearly Blue Book wasn't able to debunk this. And I think that they wanted to. Hynek, I think, came away from this convinced that Lonnie came across a craft that landed out there in the desert. Don't know if it was from this planet or elsewhere, but Lonnie definitely saw something out there in the desert, and he saw it fly away. And I think Hynek was convinced of that. He couldn't come up with another explanation. Yeah, there you go.
I agree.
Yep. Thank you, Mike, and be safe up there in Canada.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, and great show. Nice to be part of the Fadernauts.
Yeah, thank you.
Go Beckley Tappy.
Go Beckley Tappy, Mike. What else can we do? What else can we do with the Lonnie Zamora case? Not much. one of the things that we have to stress, and I think that we all know now, that Project Blue Book was out there, to research sightings and to collect evidence, but was also designed to debunk everything that it could. That's it, to come up with another explanation. The Lonnie Zamora case was the one that remained for Project Blue Book unidentified. There was nothing else for them to conclude. It's a fascinating case. The book itself, which is absolutely incredible. Like I said, I went back, I got about 3/4 of the way through, and I went back and started over from the beginning. There are so many documents and photographs and things with the historical record that Ben and Tony have put together over the years that you just have to sit and read through it again. It's very simple. To get your copy of the book, look, Ben self-published this, okay? This is all on his own dime, okay? To get your copy of the book, you have to click on the link right there at jimmychurchradio.com. It'll take you to Ben's Facebook page. You're not going to Amazon for this. You're not going anywhere else. You need to go straight to Ben and reach out to him. The links are over at jimmychurchradio.com. Go and say hello to Ben. He is a great researcher. He's a great guy. Let him know that you listen to the show. Reach out to him, and he'll tell you what you have to do to get your own copy. But I can tell you this. I am going to go through and read it all again. It is absolutely fascinating. Comprehensive, well-researched, and all of the documents are there. I told Ben, and I'll let you go with this. There was a link here going back to, I think it was Unsolved Mysteries or one of the shows. It wasn't Sightings. It was another one with a reenactment of the Socorro case. And I went back, and it's really, really good. But in this, you've got Lonnie Zamora doing an interview, and friggin' Captain Holder of the Air Force is on camera talking about this case. And you're able to just go, wait a minute here. I don't want to give anything away. You need to go and check it out all for yourself. It's absolutely fascinating. Now, with that, I want to let everybody know that tomorrow night, for the first time on the show, Seth Breedlove is here, and he's going to announce his new film, The Mothman Legacy. The situation with, I am so excited. I have been a fan of Seth's over the years, and all of his documentaries that he has out with small town monsters. And of course, you can go to smalltownmonsters.com. But Seth is going to be here tomorrow night, and it doesn't get any better than that. And then on Wednesday, Greg Hausch. Now, this show with Greg Hausch has been in the planning now for over 2 months. A lot of things have transpired around this country, and Greg is always on the scene doing things around the country. We finally got him locked down. He's going to be with us on Wednesday night to talk about artificial intelligence and the singularity. Thursday night, of course, is another Fader night with open lines all night long. Again, I want to thank Ben Moss for coming in tonight. What a great show. And the book and how to get it are right there at jimmychurchradio.com. Fade to Black's executive producers, Rita Camarion. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Kevin. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitola, Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA The Planet. This broadcast owned and copyrighted 2020 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black of the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll see everybody tomorrow night right here with Seth Breedlove. Until then, be safe. Go back, Lee Tappy.